Glorilla was finally free, just out on bail after months of legal chaos. But her relief was short-lived. Within hours, a violent attack left her fighting for her life. But who did this to her? And why? Was it just random, or was this part of a bigger plan to take down one of the hottest names in hip-hop? Stay tuned as we dive into the shocking twist that no one saw coming. Glorilla's release on bail. After months of back and forth in the courts, the moment Glorilla had been waiting for finally arrived. On the night of July 20th, 2025, she was granted bail and released from Forsyth County Jail, much to the relief of her family, friends, and fans. The news hit the streets fast. Glorilla was finally free, and with her, the hope of a fresh start. The rapper's legal troubles had been a heavy cloud hanging over her career, but now it seemed like the clouds might part, allowing her to rebuild and continue rising in the industry. The anticipation was palpable. She had been wronged by the system, and now, after weeks of uncertainty, it seemed like she could focus on her music, her tours, and the future. The whole situation with the police, her arrest over a home invasion where she wasn't even present, and the ridiculous charges had sparked outrage in the streets. Fans rallied around her, questioning the priorities of the system, which seemed more interested in her marijuana possession than the real criminals who'd violated her home. Her release from jail was supposed to be a breath of fresh air, a moment to breathe after the storm. That night, Glorilla stepped out into the world with a renewed sense of purpose. Her social media lit up, her fans flooded her comments, and the NBA All-Star Game in Indianapolis, where she had been slated to perform, was just around the corner. She had so much to look forward to. It was a moment of redemption, or at least it seemed like it was. But little did she know, the very moment she stepped out, her life was about to take another tragic turn. While Glorilla was out celebrating her brief victory, a more sinister plan was unfolding behind the scenes. The timing was too precise, the target too obvious. As soon as Glorilla was free, a dangerous attack was already in motion, a direct retaliation from an enemy she didn't even know she had. The quiet moments of her release quickly turned into chaos, a stark reminder that even freedom has its price.
The attack after bail. Just hours after Glorilla's release, as the adrenaline of her newfound freedom began to settle, the unimaginable happened. It was supposed to be a time of relief, a moment to take a breath after everything she'd been through. But the streets had other plans for her. Around 2 a.m. on July 21st, while she was making her way back to her home, the unthinkable took place. Glorilla was violently attacked right after being freed from jail, a calculated and ruthless move that seemed to come out of nowhere. The scene was like something straight out of a nightmare. Glorilla's car was surrounded by a group of armed individuals, blocking her from moving and causing a scene that no one saw coming. The attackers were swift and efficient, with their aim set squarely on revenge. This wasn't some random street robbery, it felt personal. The thieves, though masked, carried themselves like they knew exactly who they were targeting. It was clear this wasn't just a coincidence. They knew exactly when she'd be free. Hours after she stepped out of Forsyth County Jail, these individuals showed up at her doorstep, planning to make a statement. No one could have predicted it, but it was a calculated attack that sent a clear message. Was this an act of vengeance, or was it part of something bigger? Glorilla didn't stand by and let herself become another statistic. She wasn't going down easily. In a split-second decision, she fought back, and it wasn't just self-defense, it was survival. The confrontation escalated quickly as she used every ounce of her strength and quick thinking to protect herself. Her team, who had been closely monitoring the situation, jumped into action, retaliating against the attackers. The thieves quickly realized they were up against more than they bargained for. It wasn't long before they realized that this wasn't going to be their night. But the chaos had just begun. Glorilla wasn't just going to walk away unscathed. The whole situation would set off a chain of events that would change everything. Again. The thieves' motive.
The attack on Glorilla wasn't random. This wasn't just a case of bad luck or a street-level robbery gone wrong. No, the more investigators dug into it, the more it seemed like there was a deeper, more sinister motive behind the assault. Whoever sent these thieves after her wasn't just looking for a quick payday. They were sending a message, and it was one that Glorilla couldn't ignore. The timing of the attack raised a lot of questions. Glorilla had just been released on bail after a long and public legal battle. Everyone knew she was vulnerable, still fighting to clear her name. It's hard not to wonder if the attackers had inside information, or if they knew exactly when to strike. Was this just a random act of violence, or was Glorilla targeted by people who had a stake in seeing her fail? Rumors started swirling almost immediately. Some claimed that the attack was a direct retaliation from rivals within the music industry, people who felt threatened by Glorilla's rise with her music. She had been making waves with her music, and her recent legal troubles had only given her more visibility. Could it be that the attack was meant to break her, to remind her and everyone else that the streets were always watching, waiting for her to slip up? Others speculated that the attack was connected to the ongoing feud between Glorilla and certain figures within her camp. She'd had issues with her producer, Hit Kid, over the rights to her hit song FNF, and there were whispers of bad blood between her and some of her old friends. Was this an act of vengeance by someone she had crossed along the way? Was there more going on behind the scenes than just business disputes? As the investigation continued, no clear answers emerged. All the authorities had were rumors, conflicting stories, and a trail of broken promises. But one thing was certain: the attack was not just about money or material gain. It was personal. Someone wanted to make sure Glorilla stayed down, and the forces behind it were far more powerful than anyone had initially realized. The deeper Glorilla's team dug, the more they discovered that this attack was just the tip of the iceberg, leading to something much larger, something they were only beginning to uncover.
Glorilla's retaliation. What happened next would leave everyone in shock. Glorilla was no longer a passive victim in this chaotic scenario. Instead of letting the attackers walk away with their victory, she turned the tables in a way that no one expected. The assault might have been a brutal and violent wake-up call, but it didn't break her spirit. It ignited a fire that set her on a path of retaliation, and the streets took notice. Her team had been prepared for something like this. Despite the surprise attack, they reacted with a level of professionalism and precision that showed how much they had anticipated the possibility of this happening. Glorilla wasn't just a rapper or an artist at this point. She was a warrior fighting for her survival and her future. They had been closely monitoring the threats against her, knowing that enemies, whether in the industry or the streets, might be looking to take advantage of her vulnerability now that she was free on bail. The moment the attack began, her bodyguards and team sprang into action, surrounding the area with swift, calculated moves. But it wasn't just about the physical retaliation. It was about protecting the reputation and legacy Glorilla had worked so hard to build. They weren't going to let her be silenced, no matter what forces were behind the attack. In the blink of an eye, they had the thieves cornered, forcing them into a situation where they realized they had made the wrong move. As the thieves scrambled to flee, the scene turned into chaos. Glorilla's response wasn't just a defense of herself, it was a statement. She wasn't going to be intimidated or pushed into submission by anyone. The tables were now turned. Those who thought they could break her were left reeling as Glorilla and her team took back control. But the retaliation wasn't just physical. It was a message to the streets, to the industry, and to anyone who thought they could stop her. Glorilla wasn't just fighting for her life, she was fighting for the respect she had earned, for her freedom and for her future. The thieves were left scrambling, with no idea that attacking her was just the first mistake in a much bigger game. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a fight that Glorilla had no intention of losing.
The industry's role.
As Glorilla's battle for survival continued, whispers of a deeper conspiracy began to surface. The attack on her wasn't just a random street act. It was a carefully timed move that had connections to the very people who should have been supporting her rise in the industry. For a young artist like Glorilla, who had just broken into the mainstream, there were bound to be enemies. But what no one could have predicted was the extent to which the industry's politics and power players might be involved in her downfall. The music industry is no stranger to dirty dealings, and Glorilla had already made waves with her breakout success. Her rise to stardom was fast and furious, and with it came the usual challenges: rivalries, manipulation, and power struggles. The timing of the attack after her release on bail made it seem like more than a coincidence. Some insiders were starting to suggest that the attack could have been orchestrated by figures in the industry who were threatened by her success and the trajectory her career was taking. Could someone within the industry have been behind the plot? After all, her legal troubles had only made her more visible in the media, and some were starting to question whether certain players were trying to tear her down before she could fully establish herself. Glorilla had recently been involved in some business disputes with her producer Hitkid over the rights to the smash hit FNF. The accusations that she and her label had tried to snatch ownership of the track were serious, and the tension between them had been brewing for months. Some even suggested that Hitkid, or someone close to him, could have used the attack as a way to strike back at her, seeing her as a threat to his financial gain. But it wasn't just the behind-the-scenes business drama that made Glorilla a target. It was the public persona she had built. Glorilla wasn't playing by the typical rules of the industry, and she wasn't afraid to speak out against the systemic issues she faced. That kind of boldness made her a target for those who preferred the status quo and who saw her success as a challenge to their own dominance. As the investigation into the attack continued, Glorilla and her team couldn't help but wonder, was this just an isolated incident, or was it part of a larger, more sinister effort to take her down? The lines between personal betrayal and professional jealousy began to blur, leaving everyone questioning just how far people would go to protect their power in the music business. Glorilla wasn't just up against thieves and criminals. She was fighting a battle with forces much more powerful and dangerous.
Glorilla's response and revenge. After the violent attack, the streets were waiting for Glorilla's next move. Her response would set the tone for how the rest of the world would perceive her, and she didn't disappoint. Rather than retreating in fear or silence, Glorilla came out swinging, using her voice to tell the world exactly what had happened and what she was planning to do next. In a world where many would cower or back down, she stood tall, unafraid, and ready to take control of her narrative. Within days of the attack, Glorilla took to social media, and her words were nothing short of powerful. She didn't sugarcoat the situation or hold back. She was real, raw, and unapologetically herself. Glorilla posted a message that cut through the noise and sent shockwaves across her fan base. "I ain't going down like that. They attacked me, but now it's my turn," she wrote. The post went viral, with fans and critics alike rallying behind her. It wasn't just about self-defense anymore. It was about reclaiming her power and making sure the attackers knew they had messed with the wrong person. But it wasn't just about words. Glorilla wasn't playing the victim in this story. She was playing the victor. As she continued to recover from the physical and emotional wounds of the attack, she quickly mobilized her team. The response wasn't just about retaliation, it was about strategy and taking back control. Glorilla had been underestimated before, and this time her enemies would regret it. Her team, already prepared for anything, made moves behind the scenes to ensure that the people who orchestrated the attack felt the full force of Glorilla's comeback. While the investigation into the attackers was still ongoing, Glorilla's next steps were already in motion. She wasn't going to let this incident go unpunished, not when her career, reputation, and safety were on the line. Her legal team began working overtime, ensuring that the people responsible were brought to justice. But the retaliation didn't stop with legal action. Glorilla took a more personal approach to make her voice heard, connecting with key influencers and industry figures who had the power to change the narrative in her favor. Her response was more than just about revenge. It was a statement. Glorilla was making it clear that no matter what the system or the streets threw at her, she was unbreakable. And by the time the dust settled, it wouldn't just be the thieves who had made a mistake. It would be everyone who ever doubted her strength. She wasn't just surviving the chaos, she was thriving, and her comeback was just beginning.
Glorilla's resilience. Amid all the chaos, one thing about Glorilla stood out more than anything else: her resilience. The attacks, the legal battles, and the betrayals and the public scrutiny could have broken anyone, but not her. While the system, the streets, and the industry all seemed determined to tear her down, Glorilla refused to back down. In fact, the more they tried to break her, the stronger she became. From the moment she was attacked, it became clear that Glorilla wasn't going to let anyone control her story or dictate her future. The media painted her as a victim, but she wasn't about to play that part. Glorilla had always been unapologetically herself, and this was no different. Instead of cowering or laying low, she doubled down, showing the world exactly what she was made of. Her ability to push through the violence and the adversity was nothing short of inspiring. Rather than letting her attack define her, Glorilla used it as fuel to light the fire in her career. She quickly took to social media, addressing the attack with confidence, strength, and a call to action for her fans. Her followers watched as she stood tall, refusing to let the streets or anyone else take her power. Glorilla's response wasn't just about defending herself, but it was about sending a message. She made it clear that no matter how many obstacles the world threw her way, she would keep pushing forward. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving, and she was going to continue making music, performing, and showing up for her fans no matter what. This attack could have been the breaking point for many, but for Glorilla, it only solidified her resolve. She became a symbol of resilience for everyone who has ever been knocked down, showing that the road to success isn't easy, but with determination, it's always worth the fight. And as she continued to rise, she proved that nothing, not even a brutal attack, could stop her from achieving her dreams.
Conclusion and call for justice. As the dust settles from this vicious attack, one thing is clear: Glorilla's battle is far from over. But her resilience, determination, and refusal to back down have turned her story into something bigger than just a personal fight. It's a call for justice, a challenge to a system that's tried to break her at every turn. This isn't just about Glorilla's fight for freedom. It's a wake-up call to the broader issues of systemic targeting and the exploitation of young Black success. The system that failed her is the same one that has failed so many others before her, and it's time for that to change. As this story continues to unfold, Glorilla's message is clear. She's not just a victim, she's a symbol of resistance. Her fight is everyone's fight. The question is, will justice prevail, or will the system continue to target those who dare to succeed?